Eccoci, Heidi. I love.
That was so
Lydia's
powerful.
gone. Wasn't it? Did you enjoy that? Yeah.
That was very.
It is absolutely fabulous. Yeah, absolutely fabulous. Allora, I'm just going to speak in Italian for 2 minutes so that I can make a proper, introduction. Buonasera a tutti quanti. Livia chiaramente è uscita, ma poi rientrerà. Stasera abbiamo con noi la grande giornalista investigativa Heidi Cuda. Heidi, una nostra amica, e abbiamo gli occhiali che sono Heidi è, come ho detto, una giornalista investigativa, ha anche vinto un Emmy e praticamente ha scritto moltissimi libri e anche prodotto dei documentari. Quindi noi stasera la conosceremo, stasera parleremo di tutta la radicalizzazione che sta... Yeah. Parleremo della radicalizzazione dell'America, quello che sta succedendo in questo momento con la decisione della Corte Suprema e con la nostra gradita e onorevole, our honorable, guest, Heidi Cuda. Heidi, welcome to What the Fuck.
I'm so grateful to be here. One of my favorite phrases I learned from Ice-T back in the early 90s, and it's fuck you and fuck you too. And it's when I'm really feeling
I know. No, but you know what, Heidi? We cannot let this situation, dictate what we do. All right.
That's right.
We've got to take action.
That's right.
Another note that I'm going to say this in Italian as well. Heidi è anche produtrice e anche co-host di un podcast incredibile, Radicalized Pod. Ok, quindi per tutti quanti che ci stanno ascoltando, guardando stasera, vi invito, tutti ad andare a vederlo perché è fantastico, assolutamente. Ok, Heidi. And Livia is back.
Yay!
She's back. Yay! Livia's back with the earrings.
I know.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Okay, Heidi, let's get into it, love.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, because you've had such an incredible career, Heidi, right? Can you tell us some of the highlights, so that maybe some of our Italian audience, they can go back into some of the work that you've done and look it up, read some of it. Tell us a bit about what some of the highlights.
Well, first of all, I want to say that withlinoventura is my favorite actor. So I just wanted to put that out there.
There you go.
The sun and the moon and the stars sets around Withlinoventura, who I believe may be from Italy originally and then raised in Paris.
Right.
I am a veteran journalist. I've been an investigative reporter most of my career. I was also a rock and roll nightlife writer. And it was very cool because I would see the city at night, and I'm from California, and I did my rockin' and rollin' in Hollywood. So I would see the city at night and really get to kind of be a part of this living, breathing, beautiful center of our universe here in America, LA, obviously being one of them. But I was also an investigative reporter, always seeing what's lurking behind the dark corners. And so that background actually became very essential in 2016 when I found out Trump was going to win. And the most important thing was that in that moment, I realized that I was an investigative reporter unshackled by a corporation, and I could actually say and speak the truth and speak truth to power, which wasn't unusual for me because I wrote a bunch of books about rap and punk as well as part of my journey. So for me, speaking truth to power was vital. And I'm a first generation German immigrant, so I didn't have the option to be silent.
I didn't know that. Oh, yes, of course. Which is why, Heidi, we're a bit shocked on, let's say, what the ongoing war in Ukraine and the way Germany did not step up right from the get-go. It was something that I think was extremely difficult for all of us to accept. But you wrote, okay, Heidi ha un libro che si chiama Complicated, okay, which is a great title, by the way. All right.
Yeah.
And Heidi, you were around, I mean, you, with all of your contacts, with all of your experience, I mean, let's talk about Trump for a second. That's where I want to begin with him. All right. Because a little even before that, and then get up to the decision that we're seeing today, because I think I'd like our Italian viewers to understand it from a real American point of view, someone who's lived through and documented, okay, with Trump and everything. So when did you start? Like, I mean, Trump has been around for ages, right? I mean, he was in New York in the 1980s. He was this businessman, so on and so forth.
Right.
When he started running for office, what was your reaction?
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit before that. The first time I wrote about Trump publicly was in the Los Angeles Times, where I wrote he was a has-been, like in 1995 or 96, as I was relating to a club thing I was writing about. And then in the 2000s, as an investigative reporter for a local broadcast news affiliate, he would always come on my radar as somebody who was the front man for Ponzi schemes and for pyramid schemes. So there's still litigation going on till this day with a company that was selling some bogus video phone technology. And all these people would invest their life savings in this particular company because Trump said it was a good business opportunity. They didn't know that their life savings was what the game was. So he's always been involved in the Ponzi and the pyramid scheme. So when he announced he was running for president, I knew him to be a con artist and I knew him to be a fraud. And September of 2016, my mentor in investigative reporting told me he was going to win. And that's when I published my first blog post about this. And I went from being a very popular member of Los Angeles media to crickets and silence. And there was a great awakening for me in that moment. And I knew just how hard this fight was going to be. And so just like a couple days ago with the Roe decision, even though I knew it was going to happen, I felt as bad on Friday as I did on the day after the election of 2016. It was the same kind of feeling, like we are in for a fight. Yeah,
huge fight. No, Heidi, why were people? I mean, you went through the elections. I saw it from here. Okay, I was following everything from here. Again, I mean, we've talked before, the two of us, about how this is really transnational and international. Okay, links and stuff like that. We've had conversations about this. But thinking of Trump, how could the Americans themselves, right? How come they were brought to actually vote for him? Okay. And then in the years, okay, like instead of seeing him for the fraud that he was, that we know, right, documented in the whole business, that he still has a. How did that happen in your view?
Okay. Such a great question, and no one ever asks it. They really don't ask it. There was a number of things at play. Let's go to St. Petersburg, where people were working on a large-scale effort to subvert American democracy. It's not a fucking troll factory. It's a large-scale effort to subvert American democracy. People were working 12-hour shifts. They had to have a minimum of 6 Facebook accounts. They had to have a minimum of 10 Twitter accounts. They had to post a minimum of 50 Twitter posts a day. They had to post a minimum of 10 Facebook posts a day. Okay, so let's talk about that. That's one aspect. Then we have this invention called the television. And we've not been quite right since, because reality TV in America, just like under Berlusconi, right, who controlled a lot of the media, reality TV created a myth around this person, which the producers knew to be a fraud. The people who worked on the show knew it to be a fraud. Tony Schwartz, who wrote the book Art of the Deal, knew it to be a fraud, but millions of Americans thought he was a self-made man. And that myth is why some people voted for him. The large-scale subversion operation was why other people voted for him. There was a massive effort to get Americans warring against each other, and a massive effort to move a conservative to be anti-immigrant, a Hillary voter to vote for Bernie, a massive effort to push us further apart and make us hate each other. And Russia did that, and it's ongoing.
Yeah,
and then
and it's still happening.
The one last thing.
Oh, sorry, you go. I wanted to add just like a little note for our Italian audience. They might not know about Mark Burnett, the producer of The Apprentice, who is very well known for being like a, let's say, Russian sympathizer. So much so that before The Apprentice, he got funds even to make a reality TV show about Putin in Russia.
Correct.
So these are the people that they are extremely well-trained, savvy, and well-funded people that made the myth of Trump, which is even not a myth, but it's a big lie. And one of the people responsible is Mark Burnett, who, by the way, curated the dreadful RCN from the White House. Remember that full with like Nazi symbols? The last year Trump was in the White House, they had the convention, the Republican convention. It was produced by Mark Burnett, the producer of The Apprentice, and very close to the Russian TV. So this is just for our Italian audience too.
It's amazing because things happen so fast and so furious that it's very easy to forget very important things like what you just mentioned, as far as that imagery, which was clearly meant to look like Nazi imagery and white supremacy imagery. So thank you for reminding us of that. There's a couple other things that I wanted to point out to answer Monique's original question. There are people who have a certain comfort level with fraud. And if you are committing fraud in your own business, if you are a billionaire who runs the, into the gray areas of the law, then Trump would be your guy, right? Because it's going to be a transactional tit for tat thing, right? Here's the other thing. The moment he got the Christian coalition to put their thumb on the scale for him is the moment that it became very serious that he would win. And that is because that particular coalition wants their judges. They want their tax breaks. Much of it is fueled, as you know, by the fossil fuel industry. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Today, there was a decision, right? Today, if I'm not mistaken, that was made at another Supreme Court decision. Excuse me, on removing a lot of the regulations. We can look that up, maybe.
Well, I think they kicked it down to further in the week, but it could have happened while I was getting
that
prepared.
hasn't happened yet. Okay, yeah. But I mean, that's the whole thing. The Christian coalition, which is that Heidi has just mentioned, is extremely important because that brought, we're talking about a voter base of 20 million people, all right, that get, mobilized. And they do that through the churches. They do that. We know that in 2020, we had evidence that the mobilization was actually very well organized. Heidi, I think you also have you ever spoken with Brent Alpress? I'm sure
He's a good friend. He's a dear friend.
Exactly, yeah. And, the film that they had made, the documentary film.
People You May Know.
That's it. Thanks for reminding us, right? Of the title.
Very important.
Really important film. And how they had penetrated, because Cambridge Analytica, after 2016, because of all of the investigations that were ongoing and the reputational damage, and they probably just wanted to go into hiding, they decided to close it all down, right? Nix closed it down. But afterwards, a lot of spin-offs, came out of that, all right? Yeah. Like a bit of like a Hydra. One of them, all right, that we know is Glue. And this is what Brent, Alpress. So if people are listening and watching, please make sure you go onto his feed, to get some other information.
Right.
And also Emma Bryant. I mean, there's quite a few people that are looking all into this. I had conversations with them before the election in 2020, because we were watching this. I said, oh my God, and they had set up again, right, Heidi? They had set up again, and they were, pressing, they were all in the churches, into the mega churches, because let's remember a lot of that, and they were getting, again, granular information for targeting, micro-targeting, propaganda. All right.
Which is what's happening now. It's happening again right now.
And it's happening again right now.
That's right.
Yeah. Exactly.
The nicest people that I knew in 2016, who also happened to be very religious, started posting on Facebook all this poisonous misinformation and malinformation about Hillary Clinton. And so they clearly were dealing with preachers who then I would later investigate and find out they were up to absolutely no good, but they were all dealing with preachers who were getting their talking points from the Council for National Policies and the right-wing think tanks, and they would have a very coordinated talking points. And why this is so important is that Ann Nelson, our friend who wrote Shadow Network, and along with Brent did a lot of investigating on the CNP, there was never a time in German history where the majority of the Germans voted for Hitler. That never happened. So it doesn't take a majority to see this kind of authoritarian capture. It really is not. It really.
This is what exactly, Heidi, you've just said something that is absolutely critical in elections, because in any election, we always think that there's like an overwhelming majority. That only happens in Putin's Russia, but they're not really elections.
Right.
Okay. In our elections, there's that little, right? There's like, we have, let's say on the right, 20% here, 15% there, 30%. Then you put it all together and you've got, the whole front going. But yes. And in the States, Heidi, it was a really small percentage, wasn't it, of swing voters that brought them over to Trump.
70,000 voters. So
I mean, that's all we're talking about.
When you look at Cambridge Analytica, right, and they've always tried to dial down their impacts. How many African-American voters didn't show up because they had been micro-targeted into believing that Hillary was a racist because of a malinformation campaign? How much voter suppression occurred? It was voter suppression. It was hyper-focused toward the purple states. They got the data because Russia actually sent spies on the ground prior to the election to figure out what were the issues that America was most focused on and what were our weaknesses. And our racial divides continued to be one weakness. The way millennials suspiciously viewed government was another weakness. It was incredibly easy to exploit and divide people. And so 70,000 votes was all it took to install essentially a corrupt Russian puppet. And one of the most important things I learned from the former president of Estonia, Tuomas Ilves, who I know that you are friends with as well, Monique, is that it's not just one politician that was captured by Putin. It's not just one. It's just not multiple. It's also a lot of businesses and their dealings. And of course, you guys know all about the World Family of Congress and all the intersections between the dominionist and fossil fuel,
Yes.
Heads, CNP, and the Kremlin. So it's a coordinated, it's a nice coordinated team.
It's a coordinated team that works globally. So my effort in the weekend and in the last 2 days since Roe versus Wade is telling to Italian audiences that it must concern also us in Italy and in Europe, because the same organizations are, and the same funders are acting globally, and they are interlinked with the Russian Orthodox Church, but not only. So what is now to many an American problem, the overturning of Roe versus Wade, will soon become, in a different form, our problem as well, because the target is not overturning a law on abortion. The target is overturning democracy.
That's right.
Overturning abortion is just one, step.
In fact, I wanted just to explain. I'm just going to say this in Italian for a second, Heidi, because I want our Italian, whoever is watching us, to really get this straight. C'è un gruppo negli Stati Uniti che si chiama Council for National Policy. Okay? È un gruppo ombrello. Okay? Che cosa vuol dire questo? Non è solamente, diciamo, un gruppo solito. Questo è un'associazione che porta a sé tutte le associazioni, connesse, e sono in vari settori e vari, quindi sono dei lobbisti, ma non si può dire nemmeno lobbisti, perché hanno proprio una missione, dettato. C'è una grande porzione all'interno del Council for National Policy che sono, diciamo, religiosi non è la parola giusta, sono dominionists, sono quelli delle 7 montagne, cioè praticamente hanno una visione che è tipo, se vogliamo dirlo, cristofascista, right? They're
Christo-fascists. Yes.
Okay, this is what they are.
Yes.
Okay, e l'amministrazione Trump ha avuto da questo CNP moltissimi aderenti, all right, che erano nelle posizioni più alte, all right, dell'amministrazione. So I was just explaining a little bit because they may not know. Per il lavoro sul CNP vi invito di leggere il libro che si chiama Shadow Network di Ann Nelson. Che, and I remember, Heidi, when I talked to Ann, it was as soon as her book came out, I said, oh, what is this? I read the whole thing. I said, fuck, I got to talk to this woman. So I called her when nobody knew anything, all right, about the CNP. She said that when she wrote this book, that people, and this probably happened to you when you were talking about Trump, they started looking at you, they go, you know, what? You know what I mean? The shoulder shrug. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's fucking insane.
It is.
But it's happening to us here today, even with Livia and I, that we try to talk about how difficult, what is happening in Italy, for example, and nobody, right now, some people are starting to wake up. But I remember when I was talking about this, along with other journalists, Jacopo Jacoponi, for example, but not just him, there were other journalists talking about this. I'm sure then you were talking about it when Brexit, right? Because we're talking about all the different things. There's like Trump, there was before that Brexit, right?
Right.
You know, una cosa che ho dimenticato di Heidi, lei scrive per il Byline Times, che è un giornale fantastico inglese. All right. And Heidi, I just told them that you write for Byline Times as well.
It's so cool because I understand what you're saying. And I don't know.
Oh, because you know Spanish.
I know Spanish.
There you go. I
watch Benigni films and and I watch French films, and so I'm understanding what you're saying, and it's also because you're saying it slowly, so I can catch some words. So it is. What's incredible is that we found our tribe. You, Anne, Ruth Bendia. Now I get to meet Livia. We find our tribe, Brent Allpress. We know all these same people. These are the people doing the labor of democracy. What is tragic is that I've watched people who I thought were better than that do absolutely nothing but remain quiet for the last 6 years.
Wow.
And I know, again, because of my family background, that remaining quiet during a time of authoritarian capture is not an option. And I think with maybe similar to Berlusconi, is so many people were just watching the clown show and the media titillation and the daily outrages, that they weren't realizing these people are being used as vessels for fascism. So if the overturning of Roe is not going to be the wake-up call for those who remain silent, I don't know quite what is, because it's not simply about control of women. It's actually about, in our case, white male property owners wishing to turn back the clock to when they had supreme power by turning women into felons so those women cannot vote. Because if you, half the states of America are felonizing women's rights to health care and reproductive rights, and that will mean that they are not allowed to vote. And that will sincerely, deny additional rights, and also basically ensure that the progressive democracy that we have called our home will no longer exist.
May I add something also on the clown show? And I'm curious to know if you know more about what you think about it, Heidi, and also Monique. The clown show, to me, it's part of the package. They need the clown show to distract us with outrage. They are operating those significant changes to the and they are delegitimizing the democratic institution. It started happening with George W. Bush, right? Everybody was concentrating on how outrageous things he was saying, while they were, bringing the West into a war that has only brought destruction within our own home-school democracies. So the clown show, it's devised to make us feel better about ourselves, superior to our governors, so that we keep distracted from what's important. And that's why it's very important right at this moment for everybody, not just in America, to focus on defending our rights, not only as women, but as, citizens and our human rights. And don't think about the clown show.
Heidi, there's a question here that is really interesting. I can't remember, I didn't write the person's name, so I want to thank them before I ask the question. Now we're talking about a whole population, probably. Heidi, would you put like the real Trumpers at about 30%?
Yes.
Okay.
Fluctuating between 30 and 40%. And I'm sorry, I just realized I didn't have my computer battery plugged in, so I'm like, I'm gonna take care of that.
It's okay. Heidi's coming right back. And in the meantime, nel momento sta mettendo, diciamo, la batteria alla nostra Heidi. Quello che lei parlava della cattura politica e finanziaria è quello che è successo anche qui in Italia, io direi dagli anni di Berlusconi, in modo serio. Prima c'era già qualcosa, però mettiamo, e quando si parla di questo si dice proprio il political capture, economic capture. E questi sono, sono termini che noi utilizziamo nel nostro gergo, eccetera, eccetera, però quello che noi diciamo che sono i russi che hanno comprato, o i nostri politici con favori, ci sono vari modi, no, che lo fanno. E anche come sfruttano le nostre debolezze, perché questa è la parte. Loro, ricordiamoci sempre, loro ci conoscono molto, molto bene. Quando loro mettono una narrativa, e questo Livia mi puoi confermare, quando loro mettono una narrativa in circolazione nel pipeline, come usiamo questa parola che ho rubato da Livia, quando lo fanno sanno esattamente, cioè lo creano specificatamente in quel modo. Non è,
Sorry about that.
There you are. We missed you. Okay, Heidi, we got a question, and we were talking about the radicalization was achieved, right? We know how it was achieved, because I think up until now, there's so many studies that have been done. No, there's the JEC study, for example, that is about the pillars of disinformation. We know all of that.
Yeah.
All of this great work. Let's talk about, just for a minute, before we get into Roe versus Wade, because this is a really, really important thing. I know we've been sort of talking about it. How do we handle radicalization? How do we address it?
Great question.
Because, I have family members that fucking voted for Trump. In 2020.
Right.
All right. My nephew, if I have to really come clean, my nephew. All right. So it's sort of like, and he's educated. Like, we're not talking about people who, I don't know, know nothing about history. This is a person that can speak 4 languages. He's educated.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what? Well, I'm sure that there's probably some like masculine virility thing that's mixed up in there,
Sure.
Whole,
Misogyny
that
as
kind
well.
of thing. So how can we handle this, Heidi?
It's another great question. Wow, it's so exciting. So exciting to talk to such brilliant women, truthfully. I love it. And I love the fact that we're able to cross cultures and seas to have these conversations. So I started a podcast called Radicalized Truth Survives because A, I knew people were being radicalized, and B, I wanted truth to survive. And I built the show around my friend Jim Stewartson, who is one of the pioneers of augmented reality gaming. And a couple of years ago, he saw that something he pioneered for fun and to spread goodwill in the gaming world ended up being weaponized to radicalize people in a mass brainwashing scheme to create so-called digital soldiers to be the ones who actually ultimately show up at things like the insurrection. So how do they do it? They do it by trauma bonding, like with a lot of cults. You're kind of love bombed in. Hey, you over there. We have all your data. We know that you're aggrieved. We know you're watching Fox. We know that you believe in white replacement theory. So we're going to bring you over here and teach you about these bloodthirsty satanic Democrats. And while we do that, we're going to show you trauma videos. So you're going to actually think that people are being traumatized. Now, it's happening to women. It's not just men. What do you have? You have a perfect storm during COVID where people are home in front of their computers. They're getting sucked into these things, whether it's MAGA, which is an op, whether it's QAnon, which is an op, they're being sucked in. And suddenly you have 30+% of our country literally brainwashed into believing things that aren't factual. Not all of them are neo-Nazis. Some of them were just people going about their lives and their days. And it's like invasion of the body snatcher. How do we address it? Number one, we have to have bold statements from our president saying it's happening. Number two, we have to shut down the telegrams, the Foxes, the OANs, the Newsmax. We have to stop the poison that is feeding people's brains. Jim, my colleague, just did a video about this, and he likened this kind of poison that's infecting people's brains to some kind of like radiation, to Agent Orange type thing. It's that level of toxicity. And the reason I know that when you turn off the spigot that's poisoning people is because our very own beloved Ruth Ben-Ghiat's mother was watching Russia Today all day. She thought Putin was wonderful and she voted for Brexit. Then in the UK, they realized we can't keep allowing this propaganda to infect people. They turned it off. She started watching the BBC. Within days, she hated Putin and felt bad about voting for Brexit. This isn't brain surgery. We can fix this.
Yeah. You got to take it away. That's what people. Go ahead, Livia.
Can I also point the attention that love you, Heidi, for saying everything you said, for mentioning the game, because a lot of radicalization we don't realize is targeting our younger generations and is targeting them through radicalizing them through gaming. And there is no difference between the radicalization through gaming and the radicalization that Daesh does online.
Well, that is Steve Bannon's milieu, as you guys know. When you talk about Cambridge Analytica going bankrupt, and until Robert Mercer is in prison, and until Steve Bannon is deplatformed, we are going to continue to be in a world of hurt.
Exactly. And QAnon also, may I point out also to our Italian audiences that might not know, but QAnon was born as the moment, actually QAnon wasn't born as a game, but the moment that QAnon was captured by Manafort, Flynn, and it became a psyop, a political psyop to install Trump, it was turned into a game, into hide clues and search. There were maps all over the internet where you could find the Q drops, and now Q is back. Q was published hours within the Roe versus Wade overturning. Q is back. The game is back. They are seeking to radicalize more people.
And what a nice distraction after an explosive week of hearings about January 6th. What a very lovely way to once again deny us what we don't have in America. What we do not have is a shared reality. We used to have a nightly news person that we could turn to that was relatively trustworthy, and we could know the big facts. People could have differences, politically differences on, what their religious, spiritual lives were like, but we weren't warring with our neighbors the way we are now. And we don't have that shared reality. And what happened this last week previous to the Roe, Supreme Court, the news that came down Friday, is we had a president whose very own Christian conservative, members of his administration told how he had been trying to weaponize the Department of Justice. We had a president whose lackey was raided on Thursday morning prior to this hearing. We found out that the worst people in Congress, actually those spreading conspiracies and the big lie, had asked for pardons. We heard the most conservative member of Congress, Liz Cheney, tell the American people that Trump had abused their trust and had lied to them. One more thing. We had a Federalist Society judge, as conservative as you get, say that Trump and his allies present a clear and present danger. So of course we're going to have, gaming back. Of course we're going to have more rabbit holes for people to go down, because if you actually are paying attention to truth, things aren't looking so great for Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
How this time around we can help people avoid the rabbit hole. I mean, not everybody, obviously, but as many people as possible, because this didn't happen at all leading between 2014 and 2015.
Right.
And we are suffering the results of that right now.
It's global. If you watch Kat Gellin and Dr. Charles Creel's latest film, Disinformed, showing how the wellness community is being psyoped, it ends on a very chilling note where you see the QAnon map go global. I think, first of all, those of us who are not brainwashed need to understand that we are dealing with people. People do not brainwash themselves. They are under undue influence. So if you know somebody who is under undue influence, it's just like an addict. You can't say, stop drinking. You can't say, stop doing whatever it is you're doing. What you have to be is a safe space for them. Unfortunately, we bring people back one at a time, and we do it by being that safe space. You can't come at them with facts, because they are warned that people arming with facts that are different from yours are dangerous and the problem. So all you can do is keep these people in your life, like your nephew, family members. I went through this somewhat in my own family. You keep them in your life, and then at some point they're ready to come back. When you talk to people who were brainwashed by QAnon, when they figured out that this was all a lie and a ruse, they felt such tremendous shame. And the fact that they feel that shame means it's going to be difficult for them to then make the transition back to, to their old selves. And also, we just learned from a behavioral scientist from the Rand Corporation, even those who realize that they've been gamed, they can't help but sort of be lured back and seduced back. So there's a process that people go through. But we can absolutely arrest Mike Flynn for being a grave, danger to democracy. That man has committed treason on behalf of, a foreign nation state. And so, we need to see some of the promoters of this poison to our people arrested and unable to continue doing this type of work. It's that serious, and they continue every day.
I have one question, one additional question, if I may, Monique, is for you, Heidi. How do you see the role of education? So what I mean is that we see that there is, again, an imbalance in the United States, but also over here in certain countries in Europe, where the GOP is targeting the education curricula, is targeting school boards, is targeting schools. They are, let's say, targeting the history, the teaching of history, and so on and so on. But how do you see the role of education? Can education, proper education, unradicalize people? Do we need to work also on that front? Or is it lost already?
It's not lost already, in that the countries that are doing the best job at beating back disinformation, countries like Finland, Denmark, Estonia, Sweden, they have government working actually with the tech companies, making them pay for it, much the same way that the polluting companies have to pay for recycling in European countries. So there absolutely is a role to see where it's working. But what they have that we don't have is very strong educational systems. And when we talked to Ann Nelson, I did a very comprehensive interview with Ann Nelson in Byline Times. We see they're systemically hitting the whole school boards thing. That's not an aberration. That is to get the good people removed so they can put all of their true believers in. So education absolutely can do much to help install critical thinking and instill critical thinking at a young age. However, it has to be a very comprehensive effort where the Democrat, progressive, liberal democracies are involved in that process, because we are going to need a mass de-radicalization on scale in much the same way that people were denazified. The way they were denazified, though, were primarily with the Allied bombs dropping. We don't wish it to escalate like that. But, we in America are in terrible peril.
Yeah, and I have to agree with that. Okay, I mean, looking at all of the indicators, that are there, Heidi, I just want to circle back, in fact, and connect with what you've just said. One thing about the whole gaming, but also this came out, I think, through research that Brent had done, so on and so forth, was there's a lot of radicalization that was happening, and I think it's now being looked at in the armed forces.
Yeah.
And that's scary, because we know that Flynn has his people, right, with the armed forces.
Yeah.
And that brings also to people who know how to use arms,
Yeah.
who know how to organize, operations, and can be, let's say, a physical threat, right?
Yeah.
In terms of cells and things like that. Now, I mean, we would have to look at it a little more, but this is one of the alarm bells that goes off. I liked how you just one of the comments that you made about the people who try to get out of, let's say, who do get out of QAnon, who do wake up, so on and so forth. I just want to direct our viewers to go over to Coda Story because they've published quite a few stories on people who have had family members who were in QAnon. They have two sides of the story, one where they can't do anything for these people and they've lost husbands, wives, children, mothers, fathers. Okay, I know one of my friends, she still talks to her father the way that you're saying, Heidi, to be able to still keep the thing, but now he's into the Great Reset, you know.
Right.
And because he's been religious all his life. So what they do is they just grab on to that one thing, right, that you believe in.
Right.
And then because it's really what happens with, in the beginning of our chat, the kind of material that you are exposed to, traumatic. And what it's there to do is to suspend your rational self from, your emotional self. So you're no longer really thinking. And it's a process that is done. These are practices that are used by military in order to brainwash people and to get them to do, right? And there's that. And in fact, I have to agree with you that it's not enough, right, to educate, because people should try to understand the process so that they don't get trapped in it. They have fantastic programs of digital awareness and internet awareness education. As you mentioned, in Finland, for example, is way ahead in the game. I had a long chat with Jessica Aro. And, have you talked to her, Heidi?
No, I have not.
Okay, I'll get you two hooked up because you really need to talk with her.
Great.
And she goes right through in her book, the new book that has just come out. She goes right through all of the radicalization process, right, with how the troll factories work. What you mentioned right in the beginning of our talk. Okay, basically. Let's move on now to Roe versus Wade, because I think it's something that we need to really, really underscore for anybody who's watching, because this is not just about women losing control over their reproductive rights. There's an end game. Okay. Heidi, what do you see that end game to be?
Well, I want to answer that question, but I also want to go back to the military, because obviously that's a concern about radicalization within the military. We interviewed somebody who had done a study, and they're actually looking for funding. This is a RAND Corporation behavioral scientist. They're actually looking to get another study funded so they can probe deeper. But what they are finding that is most concerning is that it is the entry points into the military where people are most vulnerable. So it's those that potentially entering, and it's also those who are not supported on the exit. So we have to do a much better job of supporting our military people as they're exiting, and we have to be very wary and concerned at the entry point. So that's what they're finding out. Once they're in there, they are introduced to people from all over the country and the world, and different ethnicities and different cultures. And so that is broadening a horizon of somebody who may never have left their block. So as far as Roe, what we can say about what happened on Friday is they're coming for everybody.
Yeah.
So I went to protests on Saturday, and we shut down freeways in Los Angeles, and we're in California and we're in LA, both of which want to be sanctuary city, sanctuary state for those who need reproductive care. But the reason that we protested is we are very well aware that those who went after women's reproductive rights are coming for California. They're coming for the blue states. They are coming for our governor, our privileges. They tried to actually remove our governor a few months ago, dark money, to try to remove our governor. So it's very important that we don't look at this in isolation, that we look at it as part of a very sinister plot. And when we shut down freeways over the weekend, and when I marched, I met a young man who is an immigrant, and we had a very nice chat. And he said, he's here for me because he needs me to be there for him when they come for him. And I said, I will be there for you. And I'm grateful that you're here for me, and I will be there for you, because we know what this is. And like Ernest Hemingway said, gradually, then suddenly. We are in the then suddenly phase right now. So I would just encourage everybody not to look at it as an isolated thing. Yeah. I encourage everybody who can afford to support reproductive rights organizations. I would encourage everybody who can protest to please do so, and to also manage self-care, because we are in a long war. We're in the suddenly phase, and we must have our strength and our wits about us, because the plot is to sell despair, and we can't afford it.
No, we cannot. You're absolutely right, because it's there to shut down any kind of reaction that we could possibly have. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I would like to point out, which is a true inspiration for all of us. We had a very long conversation a few days ago with Alexandra Matyushek, okay, and she is looking into the war crimes aside in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And she talked to us about the people that she speaks with, the cases that number anywhere from 100 to 300 a day. They have 10,000 cases, all right, that they need to sit down with people. The amount of work that takes. And if you had sat in that conversation, Heidi and Livia, with her, you can see the determination. We cannot afford for these people to dictate the way that we're going to act. And it's only through these kind of conversations where we reach out to our people in the States, to our people in the Netherlands, to our people, okay, in Germany, in France, here in Italy. It's the only way we're going to get through this, because, and this is something that Heidi, we're going to be working together on this together, right? All right. Yeah. Okay. Heidi and I will be writing, okay, a very long piece, okay, together, which is the weaponization of everything. It's an idea that I've had, but I'm going to ask Heidi to help me out on this, because I think it is fundamental, okay, to map it all out. Okay.
It is brilliant. Yeah. It is brilliant.
And I need your help, Heidi, because I'm not a writer. I'm not, let's say, a trained journalist.
You just play one on TV.
I'm the Zelenskaya.
Wow, this is so exciting.
But anyway, yes. And this is why, okay, I think that we need a deeper understanding. And this is what Livia's been trying to do. Every morning she's on an Italian show, and she explains and gives information and trying to get the right kind of information out there, factual information, right? And not propaganda, because disinformation or misinformation or malinformation. Right. There's a lot of work to be done, right? Yeah. But this is it. And you know what, Heidi, you also said something that's very interesting, because one thing that we have to keep our eye on the ball all the time is that when something happens, it's always coordinated.
Yeah.
Okay. Livia and I were talking about this today. You just mentioned tomorrow there's a surprise January the 6th committee meeting that has been called. I don't know who's going to be, who they've called up, but I know that they've called it. That'll be tomorrow. But this whole process in these past 2 weeks, right? Of course, they're going to release the bomb of Roe versus Wade. Okay. Of course, they're going to do that. Just like in Ukraine, we've had 2 important meetings, the G7 meeting and then the NATO meeting. And what does Putin do over the weekend? He shells the fucking shit out of Kiev. And today, I was like, oh my God. All right. A shopping center, okay, in Kremenchuk that basically has absolutely no valid military. Okay. And this is, all right, this is what we have to be very careful of. Whenever something's going to happen, boom. In Italy, we had, Draghi off to Washington, and we got hit by, a cyber attack by Legion, I think it was at that time. This is what happens. All right. So we've got to be so vigilant. We've got to understand this is what they're going to hit us with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is World War III, and this is what it looks like. It is an information war. We also know that it's in some places a kinetic war. But if we haven't learned anything over the last 6 years, then we are definitely going to be in still greater peril. We have to study what's happened in the last 6 years and apply that to our thinking, so we are not as surprised. We're not taken as off guard. And honestly, I've been diving under the headlines for the last 6 years to figure out the truth of everything happening, because generally what is posted up quite often by corporate media is telling one version of the truth, and truth has been under siege.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned something before, Heidi, where people can no longer tell what is true and what is false, right? I mean, that's happening here too. Okay, I want people to understand that 50% of Italians in the latest poll that they did. Now, I haven't looked at the poll. I haven't looked exactly at, all of the parameters that were used, but 50% of the people did not give Russia the fault. Okay, like they said that it wasn't Russia's fault. All right. They're not really. I just sat there flabbergasted that 50% of the people would actually think something like that.
Right.
But there's been a campaign, and you know what? Now I understand why in the States, you had people that were brainwashed into voting GOP or Trump or whoever. Okay, they're people, right?
Yeah.
Where do you see this going, Heidi? Let's say, what do you think in the next month? Like what's with the hearings? Do you think that they're going to actually become anything where they've got a solid judicial basis that they can go on and prosecute?
Yes, I do believe that what we saw with the Jeffrey Clark raid on Thursday was a very good sign in the right direction. And keep in mind, as we talk about on our show, the internet moves at the speed of the internet, and justice is still moving at the speed of the 1800s. And that has been our great frustration. There has been incredibly bold things happening with our law enforcement. We had a Fox News producer arrested in London because he was building a pro-Putin propaganda network globally with an oligarch, Malafiev. And the reason that is so important is obviously when we're in an information war, when you can actually start targeting some of the people who are behind it, it's very critical. But that arrest was based on sanctions that occurred in 2014. So we have this lag time. Don't forget Tom Barrack, Trump's best friend, was arrested.
Yeah.
So we have all these things that are actually occurring. Deripaska's homes being raided. So there is, there are things happening, but again, it's not happening as quickly as we would like them to.
Yeah.
But as far as your question, I have to go back to Hannah Arendt and just
read. My God! We are sisters. Look what I have here.
I just have to
look what I have here.
I have to read you my.
Oh my God! We are sisters. Look at this.
I knew that. No.
There you go.
She says there's two quotes I'd like to read. One, the ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the convinced communist, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction and the distinction between true and false no longer exists. I bring that up because one of the workers in the St. Petersburg large-scale operation to subvert our democracy and other countries' democracies said that at one point he was sitting in a meeting and they brought in some local politician and he knew the guy was lying about everything, but he no longer had the capacity to care.
Yeah.
And that was bone chilling for me because they had taken away, they had turned off his empathy switch or his desire to know fact from fiction.
Yeah.
And of course, there's this great line, in an ever-changing, incomprehensible world, the masses had reached the point where they would at the same time believe everything and nothing, think that everything is possible and that nothing was true. That's Hannah Arendt telling us what we need to know in this moment. What we do know is that fascism may go to sleep, but it never goes away.
No, because it's part of it's right into the depths of the evilness, of all that is that seed, right, in all of us. So I agree with that. Thanks for sharing that, Heidi, because that's a really, really important stuff. Another thing, Heidi, we got a question from because the board, the messages, and there's lots of comments that are coming through. Can you explain a little bit? There's the whole, like Justice Thomas, right, on the Supreme Court. He is married to Ginny Thomas. Can you tell us a little bit about Ginny Thomas, please?
Yes, that's a very great question. I'm glad you have such smart viewers. Ginny Thomas was in a cult, and we know this because Dr. Stephen Hassan, who is the great America's kind of iconic voice in understanding how to help people who are under undue influence. He had been sort of seduced into the Moonies as a young man, and he explains the story of how he got out, and then he gives us insights into how to help people get out. And back in the day, they used to have to group people together or kidnap them or whatever. Now it's happening at mass scale because of the internet. So there's a big distinction there. But Ginny Thomas had also been seduced into a cult, and he shows video of a very young, very beautiful Ginny Thomas explaining, what she went through and how she got out. Now, what happens, we have learned, are that people who are susceptible to that kind of magical thinking, maybe susceptible to a cult, they are often very susceptible to being dragged into the next one or pulled into the next one. And as we know, she is a member of the Council for National Policy. As we know, so she's clearly a true believer. As we know, through all the documentation, that she's also an insurrectionist. And as we know, her husband's on the Supreme Court, actively working against progressive democracies. So when I say our justice system moves a bit too slowly, I think that would be a very good example. I don't believe that somebody should be on the Supreme Court who has a wife who's actively participating in overthrowing our government.
Yeah, I agree with you there. In fact, also for the 2020 elections afterwards for the insurrection, the reason why Heidi is saying that she's an insurrectionist is because she was also organizing buses. She was, through the women's, there was a women's group that she was the head of, but she was also in contact with Ali Alexander. So we know that, right?
We have her, yes, we have her in contact with
she was in thick.
Yeah,
exactly. She was in thick. Livia, do you have a question for Heidi before we wrap up? Because I don't want to overstep, okay, your generosity, Heidi. No, we can't hear you, love. Turn on your mic. Your mic. No. Hand signals.
Yeah, hand signals, baseball signals.
We got to get mics in your earrings. That's what we have to do now. Okay, she'll be.
Type it in the chat.
Yeah, Heidi, who are the people that you would like to see, let's say, arrested? No, we can't hear you, love. Who would you like to see the first arrest? Who's the gang? This is like obviously Trump.
Mike Flynn, first and foremost.
Okay, why?
Mike Flynn, because
let's go into some characters.
He is using his knowledge of how people are radicalized at mass scale against American citizens. So, and he's a traitor to our country. So I would say that Mike Flynn would be the first arrest I would like to see. Obviously, if we don't get a Trump perp walk, that would be very distressing. And apparently where Trump is most vulnerable is in the Georgia investigation, because we have him on, audio.
Don't we ever?
Basically trying to coerce, the Secretary of State of Georgia to find votes that didn't exist. So
the 11,000, there are 11,000 votes. I remember when that came out, I was like, what the fuck? Okay.
Well, what's great about that is, as you probably know, he functions like a mob boss. So there's usually no paper trail. There's no emails. He doesn't text. He has things hand delivered. So that was a gangster error. That was a full-on gangster error. So apparently what's mostly jeopardizing his future freedom will be the Georgia state election.
Okay.
But I would think Mike Flynn. I would think Roger Stone. Roger Stone worked in 2016 to overthrow our election. He continued to work in 2020, working with the alliances with various Proud Boys and whatnot. So he's in there thick. And then of course we got to shut Steve Bannon up. We got to shut that propagandist up. And while I'm having my wish list, I would say Eric Prince.
Yes,
that would be good.
We got to do something. We have to do an episode on Eric Prince. That's my dream. I said, man, because he's a real piece of fucking work.
Yeah, bring Jim in. Jim's an expert on that.
Then we got to get Jim in to talk about Prince. That's perfect. No. He'll be one of our invites.
He'll do anything for you, Monique. By the way, he loves Monique.
And
we love Jim.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Yeah, great. Okay, so Eric Prince is the brother of Betsy DeVos, always for the Italian audience, that do not realize how all those people are so interconnected, and they are interconnected with organizations that they have relationships with Italian and European people and organizations and politicians. So we need always, let me remind our audience constantly. It's not something that it's happening far away over the pond. It's happening here and now.
Yeah, that's right.
Also now.
That's
and
right.
also, now that you can hear me, I also have a question about the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we were talking about Judge Ginny Thomas, who's like, there are the phone records, and it's clear that she participated in the January 6th insurrection, not a little bit, quite a lot. She was talking to everybody, sending message to everybody.
Yes.
So, but why do you think, doesn't matter how much evidence we have of the corruption of these people, and the fact that the judges actually lied during their confirmation hearings precisely about the issue of Roe versus Wade, abortion, and marital rights?
Right.
How is it possible that doesn't matter how much they lie, doesn't matter how much they are exposed?
Yeah,
they are always there. They are always, operating in their position of powers.
I'm sure you'll be able to relate to this.
For Steve Bannon, for instance.
Yeah. So our Constitution was never stress tested like this before. Like many countries, we've always had corruption with a lowercase c.
Yeah.
Trump came along. It's a capital C now, because he and his allies are a fifth column for Putin. We know all about that. We have Manchurian candidates. So we've never had our Constitution stress tested in this way. So investigations are ongoing. They do take too long. The January 6th committee very much wants to talk to Ginny Thomas. So we do have, we do have investigations and probes, and we know the Department of Justice is not sitting idly by. However, we also have a problem, which I think Italy will also be able to relate to, in that we have entire industries that have been created in order to profit off the secrecy of corruption. So we have lawyers and accountants and art dealers, and their job is to hide the corruption. So they have shell companies over here, and they have, an accounting firm that is offshoring their books over here. So we have this entire offshore world that's very lucrative, that has grown up around this corruption. And the moment we allowed somebody who launders money for the Russian mob into the Oval Office, our Constitution and our democracy was stress tested in ways that were never expected. We never had somebody come into office who didn't show their taxes. Every single way he could maneuver around the norms, he did. So these aren't normal times, but I would not count out America just yet. I know these are dark days, but I'd like to think that we're made of better stuff, and I hope I'm right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. I think so too. We are made of better stuff, and we need to do our part.
Yeah.
So
because you know
Heidi.
what it is too, Heidi, is that for many years, I think that going back even with back to Obama, sort of European countries, Europe in general, had been sort of detached, right, from what was going on in the States. Sure, there were, Italy is an Atlanticist country, the European Union is, but right now, the States, like, we need, it has to be done together. It cannot be done just separately.
Oh, yeah.
Today, there was a great announcement by the NATO nations that they're going to be increasing, for example, most countries are at their 2% thresholds. Let's say on the military side, there seems to be something moving there, because for many years, NATO was just sort of like a dead duck. It was there on paper, but, not really, but now they're taking it seriously. There are also, there are lots of, let's say, international or between Europe and the United States, different programs that are now being set up to increase intelligence and information, the flow, and this is starting to get set up. I mean, there are lots of signs, because it's not, the States should not be alone in this, and the European Union or the free world should not be.
That's
I think it's the only way, because authoritarian power is strong, because they don't play by rules.
Russia's always at war. Russia's
always at war. Then we're going to have to deal with China. We're going to have to deal with Iran. We're going to have to deal with all of the countries that are affiliated.
It starts with a global treaty on tech. It starts with a global treaty on technology, privacy, and techno-fascism.
And there was a first step, but with the digital, the DSA, the Digital Service Act, and it was immediately followed in the USA by the how was it called, for the freedom of internet, the Declaration for the Freedom of Internet. But as usual in those things, tech goes fast. The capture of tech from the, and that happened also, by the way, with Hitler in the third time. Like, new technology brought in by, for instance, IBM played a big role in the success of the Jewish genocide, right? So totalitarian regime or aspiring totalitarian regimes are faster at embracing tech
Yeah.
We have seen it also with Russia, with disinformation.
Well,
with
because it's
cyber.
always about power and money. It's always about power
Exactly.
and money.
It's about that, and that they don't have to abide by any rules whatsoever.
That's
They
right.
create their own to their own fashion. For example, someone here put let's say, a comment about Joe Biden not being the right kind of president at the right time, or he was weak or whatever. But we have to understand that our leaders have to play by the rules. Otherwise, right, we just become exactly like them. So, I mean, look, this is, there's such a difference between the fucking crook and mafioso that Trump was to what Biden is trying to do now. You may like him, you may not like him, but I would not, I don't envy his position. I don't envy, and he's trying to do the best he can right now. I think
he is. He is. He is a. I knew I'd be voting for him since 2017. I knew that he would be the Band-Aid to stop the bleeding that we had going on in our country. And I also see the work that he is doing to continue our democracy moving along. But I also do know that unless he makes some bold moves and takes some executive orders, we are going to be under the rule of an extremist party probably forever. So we have a very short window to do some very big things. But I do think we've given him some great suggestions on this show.
Yeah, we need to send it to him, and we will. We'll get it. We'll get it over there.
His chief of staff has retweeted me, so I'll make sure.
There we go.
I'll make sure to tweet this out.
We gotta get him. Listen, Heidi, we have a tradition here on What the Fuck. Okay, we ask all our guests, what moment? Now, I mean, there were so many this week. Okay, but was there one moment where you just said, "Oh, come on, what the fuck"? Okay, I know that Roe was probably, a big one on that one, but is there something else
that just happened from this past week?
Yeah, or yesterday, or today, or this minute, because that's how fast things are moving.
Well, my immediate what the fuck was forgetting to charge my laptop during your show. No, the moment that I would like to point out goes back to the weaponization of everything. And it's the moment that I realized that because of the activism I do, that I had been set up by both online and offline forces to harm and blow up my life. And I bring that up because this work that we do with our own names, very much resistance work. In World War II, they couldn't use their names. And the reason we do this work with our names is because we don't want to get to the point where everything has to go underground. So, so I appreciate you giving me this platform to bring the news from America and from California. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, no, it means a lot that you've actually.
It means a lot to us
babe.
too.
Believe me.
Yeah.
Okay, so Livia, let's talk about your what the fuck moment.
Yeah, my what the fuck moment of the week is a very geeky what the fuck moment.
Okay. Oh, there we go. She's gonna get techie on us. There you go.
Yes, and it's the fact that for the first time, a deep fake was able to fool for a long period, long minutes. Elected officials in 15 minutes in multiple European countries. Can you understand what 15 minutes of a private conversation among elected of European countries can bring in terms of intelligence to Russia? So my what the fuck moment of the week is when the mayor of Spain was tricked into a Zoom conversation, well, not Zoom, a conference call with the mayor of Kiev, Klitschko. The request, notice this, the request came from the official email of Klitschko, which means that
they hacked into there.
They hacked into the system, into the Kiev municipality system, which should be really well guarded at this time. And they were able to set up a meeting, not only with the mayor of Madrid, Spanish mayor, but also with the mayor of Vienna and another one. There were like 4 mayors tripped into this, and Berlin as well. So, but this conversation went on with the Spanish mayor for 50 minutes, and they only realized might have been a deep fake when the fake Klitschko started talking about how the Ukrainians refugees were taking advantage of the Berlin of the German system.
That's right.
So this might seem something rather laughable, but it's not.
No.
The next frontier, and we are already there, and the legislation is not even near there.
Yeah.
The next frontier of cyber war is deep fakes.
That's right.
And this one was pretty successful. So I really went, what the actual fact is going on.
That's brilliant, Livia. And so my real what the fuck moment was based. I literally cannot send videos to the guys on my podcast team without asking if it's a deep fake.
Oh, wow.
Mike Flynn this week flashed the white power symbol on Steve Bannon's show, and I had to ask my guys, was that a deep fake? And Jim's like, no, he does it all the time. So that's really you're what the fuck is so important, and that's my second part 2 of the what the fuck.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No, and you know what? These things, just to, comment on what, both Heidi and you have said, Livia, this is probably just a warning shot. Mm-hmm. So there's something else down the pipeline that we don't know about. And obviously that's the way these kind of things work. So we've got to be vigilant, and let's see. And then I like what you said, Heidi, before, that certain things in our lives are still moving in the 18th century mode, whereas, to counter a deep fake, I'm sure that we're going to need to act very quickly.
That's
so I hope that our people are going to be doing that. My what the fuck, honestly, it was Roe, because I knew it was coming, but I could see already down the line, of where these people actually want to end up. And that to me was that I almost sat there and cried. But I mean, obviously the whole idea of abortion and women's rights and women's reproductive rights, so on and so forth, is important to me. But it was more what I could see coming up in, let's say, 3 or 4 moves down the road.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
really hurt and hit. And I said,
civil
my
rights.
God, I said, oh my God, people are not going to get this because they have the attention span of a gerbil.
Yeah.
So, like, they just don't get it.
And not a gobble, but a gerbil.
A gullible gerbil. Gobel's gerbil. You get into quite a few of them. So that's, for me, it wasn't so much the actual thing, because we knew that was coming up, but it was more the repercussions that I'm very much afraid of.
Yeah.
I mean, there were lots of them in the Italian news. There's one every single fucking day.
Yeah.
But it's all distraction.
And it's like, but it's all distraction. It's there just to take us away from what we should be concentrating on.
Right.
That's why I've stopped commenting on them, because I don't want to feed into their what they want me to do. So every time that I try, I go to tweet something, and I sit there and I say, hey, hold on a minute,
I know.
I know.
I know. It's really hard because when Kristen Cinema tweets something for women's rights and I respond, "Duh, troll," I'm like, what good is that? And I just delete it. I'm like, it's no good.
Yeah,
no,
I know. That's the whole thing. And then I have to say,
don't feed the trolls in your feed.
Yeah.
That's
exactly. Don't feed the trolls. That's what they say here on the show. Don't feed the trolls. And then of course today I cried watching the missiles because I had seen footage. Livia and I talked before in a little production meeting. I had seen videos of let's say inside the mall in in Kremenchuk, and it was something that I still don't understand why. I mean, not why, but let's say, I think now is the time that our countries, our leaders, have to call Russia out as a terrorist state.
Yeah.
They should have done it a long time ago. I had a conversation with Muaz Mustafa of the Sun Coalition, and he is an activist for Syria. And I have to tell you that everything that we're seeing today, and people know this, Livia knows this because she's worked on it. I'm sure, Heidi, you've worked on it too. 500,000 deaths in Syria, and it's still going on. The exact same. I read some shit that literally made me cry. So I just sat there and I said, okay, that's when you got to step away. And what you were saying, Heidi, we need our moments. It was a sneeze.
We need our moments of self-care. I know.
We need our moments of self-care.
My first tweet after Roe was because the birds were singing so loudly at my window, was like, oh, the birds still sing during fascism. Isn't that interesting? But I do want to say one way to get you out of your tears, and again, this is me always spelunking under the headlines, take a look at the oil industry profits due to this war. Take a look at the oil executives who cashed in very early on in February to the, tens of millions of dollars in personal profits. Take a look at who is going to be selected to, potentially rebuild Ukraine, and take a look at the bigger play. And that cynicism drives me. I'm telling you, I do my best work from that place, because I'm like, I get steely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what we're going to have to adapt to. You know what I mean?
That's the way and what you're describing in Neapolitan dialect is called katsima. So self-care.
We're going to send that to you.
Exactly. Okay. Self-care and katsima might get us through this moment.
I love that. Okay. That's excellent. Katsima.
Katsima, it's a form of like what you described. It's a form like of positive anger.
Positive fuck you.
Positive fuck you,
that's
exactly.
It. It's a positive fuck you. There we go.
I love it.
Okay, great. Okay, love.
Oh my God. Right. Wow.
Yeah. I know. Now, usually...
Honor.
Oh, no.
What an honor for us,
The honor was ours.
Heidi.
The honor was ours. The honor was ours. Believe me.
Especially because I know you from your filmmaking, because I've been working in documentary for ages.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
We will have that conversation.
Yeah. That's amazing.
We might even have people in common from
I
the
would love
filmmaking
that.
land.
Yeah, it'd be
Let's
great.
have that conversation.
Yeah.
And let's keep the good fight going, because it's needed. Also within the film community.
Yeah.
Because it's a wonderful, especially documentary community. I know, by the way, did you know that I read it like yesterday. Roger Stone had a documentary film crew following him. Yeah. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And that was like, there goes my people doing the good work. Did you read it?
Yes, I read the article in WAPO, and I almost I was like, oh my God.
A Danish crew, guys.
You know what, though? That's an interesting point. Heidi, if Roger Stone is allowing a film crew, right? And Trump allowed, right? Holder, was filming him. Did these guys think that they were going to actually win? And did they set it up like they were supposed to?
And also you can't ask binary questions of sociopaths. So they're so arrogant and they're so narcissistic that yes, perhaps, or yes, because they think they're so great. Trump has never met a camera he didn't like, except for Robert Mueller's.
Yeah. But also because the sociopath, they believe they can use it to their advantage. So I'm sure that they thought they could game the process of the.
If people Right. If people like my friend Jim Stewartson didn't warn people to stay away on January 6th because that the activists, the resistance like us would be the marks, then the radicalized people would have not been just beating up on cops. So that would have allowed Trump to pull the Insurrection Act and, call for martial law. And that's probably what he anticipated as his Hail Mary. And it didn't work out that way because people like Jim told people like us to stay home.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, which was smart.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Heidi, what kind of let's say narratives do you think are going to be coming out over the summer? If you have any ideas on that.
Well, truth is going to still be fighting to see sunlight. The hearings will continue. The DOJ will continue to make moves. But what will happen is that we will have such stochastic terrorism and real terrorism that we might not recognize our country. So that's very real. These like the Buffalo shooter who's in a chat room with the retired federal agent, being radicalized to hate when he was a normal kid a year or two earlier. Unfortunately, we will likely see more of that kind of domestic terrorism. But what I do hope is that it does prompt those big, bold executive orders to come through, because we still have a few hours of sunlight left before, the dawning of our democracy, before the sun sets on our democracy. We do still have a chance.
Well, you've got a place here. So whenever we have to, we're not voters, mind you. But there could be some, Italian Americans who we can reach out to and get them to wake up. And
and Americans. Yeah, when I watched your intro, I was looking at all the countries that I may have to move to. I'm like,
oh my God. I'm having this conversation with my husband.
I know.
We are talking about where can we go? Okay, besides the heat, because right now it is 29 degrees.
Yeah.
Okay, it's still 29 degrees. All right.
I'm fighting the good fight right here. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. You're staying.
I'm staying. Yeah.
Yeah, because he wants to leave. He said, we got to get
I
the fuck
understand.
out of here,
He would not be wrong, but we all, he would not be wrong. Everybody has to do what is right for them.
Of course.
And for me, it's, the moment I pressed send on my very first blog in 2016 before Trump won, I knew I was willing to die for my country. I do not want to. I don't want to die, but I realized that, somebody has to fight. So I'm one of those somebodies.
Yep. And we've seen how Ukraine has stepped up and defended themselves. So I think these are inspirations that we should be learning from. And I'm embarrassed and ashamed of my own compatriots that are not stepping up and who are taking the side of, let's say, a complete genocidal maniac. And that's all I got to say about that. But the Ukrainians, but it's the people, okay? The people, their armed forces. I mean, it's truly something that, and also, of course, even a lot, you, Heidi, but there's a lot of activists also in the States that are fighting every single day. I'm thinking of David Pepper, who's out there every day talking about the state houses. Because one thing that we haven't touched on, and it's the last thing, because I know that we always do this. It's supposed to be an hour, and then we're like, blah, 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 blah. What, Heidi, can you explain to everybody, because the state houses are now, there's a lot of pressure being put on the state houses to change electoral laws and things like that. Why? What is this strategy?
Well,
and what would be, let's say, what's the aim?
Well, just so we're very clear, corruption is the strategy. We are only talking about corruption. So when we talk about the big lie, that's corruption. Talk about stop the steal, it's corruption. All of this is a perpetuation of fraud. And the great thing about the hearings is we heard from very conservative Republicans explain that what is being pushed on them is fraud. And so this is, if you go back to Ann Nelson's work, this is the Council for National Policy and their associated groups trying to come up with further strategies to game the system, push the good people out, like we saw in the hearings, Shay Moss and her mother, Lady Ruby Freeman, to push out the good people and to push in the true believers who will do their fraudulent bidding. So again, when we talk about ways that are stress tested, these are additional ways to game the system, but it's just another perpetuation of a corruption called something else.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they could, and they're fundamental as well, because they're the ones that actually pick the election officials.
Yeah.
And
this is authoritarian capture.
Yeah.
Authoritarian.
Exactly.
I have one last question for Heidi.
Okay,
I can't read your viewer comments because they're so kind. I'm so used to the abusive trolls that I'm like, oh, that's kind. Thank you, kind person.
We have the greatest viewers in the world.
That's awesome. I believe it.
And the chat, like the side chat, it's amazing.
I believe it.
I have one last question for you. Where do I find the book you wrote with Ice-T?
Oh, I think you can still find it online. It's called The Ice Opinion, and in some countries, who gives a fuck? It was translated into Italian, so I would think that there's an Italian version. But
there we go.
But we were writing it during the uprising of 1992, and he was very vilified because his speed metal band had written a song called Cop Killer, which was basically a reaction to police brutality at the time. And it was published in 1994. So that's an OG book right there, ladies.
Okay. I'm going to look far and wide for it.
Yeah. It's a good book.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty then. So we're going to wrap it up. Hey, Livia. Okay.
We shared our what the fucks.
I know. We've had that moment together. All right.
We shared that moment.
Yeah.
And,
And Heidi, when it's closer to the elections that are coming up in the fall, we'll invite you back.
That'd
so
be
you
great.
can give us a bit of an update. And I see Fabio has put on the funky
music to
in the
signal
19th.
that
That's Fabio. All right.
It's time to go.
That's it. It's time to go. All right. So thank you, love.
Thank you, ladies.
Here's
so
Fabio.
Much.
Come on up, Fabio. Say hello. Come on up.
He's not in his pajama.
He's not in his pajamas. That's good.
Non ti
we can't
sentiamo,
hear him.
Fabio.
I'm so sorry because I'm in a mess of wiring. Thank you so much, Heidi.
I'm so grateful to be here. Yesterday, I did a radio interview in the UK, and they didn't tell me it was going to be on Zoom, so I was sitting in my underwear waiting for the meeting.
It's funny. I know. It happens.
Okay.
It happens.
What a pleasure to meet everybody. Thank you so much for having me. What an honor.
Thanks, Heidi. Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank
you. Heidi.
All righty.
All ours. Thank you so much.
Lovely to meet you, Livia.
So,
all righty.
I will send you like some DMs because I have more questions for you, and you can answer whenever you have time.
Can't wait.
But, so shall we wrap it up? Say goodbye to everybody and anticipating next week. Next week on Tuesday. We go back to Tuesday.
That's right. With me being in Toronto, so it'll be like, thing. Next Tuesday, what date is that? That's July. Oh, we have Jessica Arrow next week.
July 5th.
July 5th, we have Jessica Arrow who will be joining us, and she'll be talking about her experiences and what she went through. Okay. The way this had really marked her life and changed her life. So We'll be talking about the troll farms. We'll be talking about how more about information and how it is weaponized, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now misogyny also is weaponized.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a very important subject.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So that's it. Un saluto a tutti.
Grande saluto a tutti, un grande ringraziamento as usual a Livia e Monique che come sempre ci portano lo splendore. Lo splendore. Grazie ancora. Grazie a tutti coloro che ci hanno seguito.
Okay.
Buonanotte. Ciao.
Good night, everybody.
Ciao.
Buonanotte. Ciao.
And Fabio is stopping the live in
3, 2,
3, 2,
1.
1.